And g'day fans, welcome back to another episode of DNA Reviews, where we're talking about good old Star Wars Andor, only halfway through the season. How madness is this, Mr. Aaron? What's going on, old son?
I can't believe we're halfway through already. It seems to have gone really fast, but I've been enjoying it. How about you?
Oh, I'll tell you what, there's a lot of stuff to talk about with this particular episode, and it's particularly cool. Now, I didn't realize until I was watching last week's episode back, I kept calling Vel Vera. So I realized afterwards, I don't know why I got Vera, where that came from, but it's Vel, by the way. So I kind of balls that one up. So anybody who wants to correct me if I say something wrong in this episode, because once again, we've got a lot more new characters, feel free to do so. Mr. Greg King is saying he's very much enjoying it. Well, I think we'd hit a bit of a high point in this particular episode, Mr. Aaron. And for those who haven't picked up on it, the episode is called The Eye. And it really was cop and eyeful in this particular one because there was stuff going on absolutely everywhere. Here we go. DJ said he didn't run into anybody at PAX. I wasn't there. Hang on, you caught COVID. Oh, okay. Well,
Oh, no.
there you go. Glad you didn't catch COVID at PAX, but there you go. And with The Eye, of course, we've got the obligatory spoilers. And I tell you what, there's some really, really groovy stuff going on. First things first, how you coping, Mr. Aaron?
Well, I'm busy as usual. It's been, I think everyone knows, it's been a really busy week. I've been dealing with a deceased estate, which means the shop is crowded and packed, and the time I've had to do stuff has been really, really like I just sat down before we got on. But I have been enjoying and watching Andor, and I watched this one twice because I particularly loved this episode. And I almost felt like in any other series, this one could have been a finale and you'd have been pretty happy with it. And this is only halfway through, so I can't wait to see the rest of the season.
Yeah, and you can kind of get a feeling as to what's going to happen next week, which is in 2 days' time, based on what happens in this episode. There's a comment here. There's a couple here. Sorry, I missed one. Something very. Hang on, I've just lost where I am. Oh yeah, sorry. So DJ said, awesome episode. The heist happens and things do not go smooth. That is very, very cool. Once again, the show is ticking up a whole lot of first times. And it is a very, very groovy. So we've got so many things to get through. It is just madness, and there's so much detail and in-depth stuff going on within the story and the characters and the dialogue. If you sit there and analyze it all, you can be there for about 3 hours. It's really, really well done. So I've had to cut a few things out, and I've had to rearrange a few things just to make our life a little easier in terms of our discussions. But first things first. So we kicked off with Karras, that's this guy, and Cassian having a bit of a gas bag. And I just wanted to highlight one thing. Karras says that he has a faith that calms him. But, of course, we don't know what that is. And I thought that was just an interesting sort of line. It's like, okay, so we don't normally talk about religions in the Star Wars universe. But whether it's a religious thing or something else, I'm not entirely sure. But I thought that was an interesting observation. So he has a faith. So, I don't know, faith that the show is going to be really, really good. The faith he's going to get through until the next day. I mean, it could be one of a number of things. What do you reckon, dude?
Well, you've got to remember at this time, you can't tell anyone you believe in the Force or you're a Jedi because it's from the Empire as well.
Well, the Church of the Force does exist at this point, right? And they're effectively like the Jedi groupies, if you will. They don't have Force powers, but they support what the Force was and the Jedi was. And they're the ones we see at the start of The Force Awakens. So it's called Church of the Force. So he may be connected to that. And yes, you are right. They are an illegal organization. So, but I don't know. I thought it was interesting. He has a faith to calm him because he's not sleeping properly because he's freaking out about the mission. It's got to be at his best. And I thought that was just one of those sort of interesting lines. There's a lot of little things you can pick up in this particular episode. And I thought that was kind of cool. Cassian, on the other hand, says that does he look thankful to you because he's got the whole scenario. I mean, poor old Cassian's life has just been one shitstorm, going from one to another. And this, I think, is why Karras appreciates Cassian's presence. And as we discover later on, despite the fact that the whole rebel cell have been together for quite some time, they don't necessarily all get along, and they've still got personality clashes with each other, which I thought was kind of cool because in a lot of the things you see in the Star Wars universe, Rebels being the perfect example, everyone is one big happy family. It's just share the love amongst everyone, right? And sometimes that's a bit unrealistic when you go, well, hang on, I'll work with this person, but I don't like that person. And clearly, Karis in this case is connected to Cassian. I thought it was kind of cool. I reckon.
I absolutely agree with you. And it is the case in a lot of these shows where when you get dysfunctional group of people together to pull off a heist like this, suddenly they all mesh together perfectly. And what I did like in this is they didn't do that. There was some friction between them. Who's going to do what? Do we trust them? No, we don't. Yes, we do. So it was more than a by the numbers heist with a group of like Magnificent Seven kind of people coming together. It was a more the dysfunctional seven rather than Magnificent Seven kind of thing.
Yeah, and that's a good point because in a lot of these shows, it's just easy to have them all combine themselves harmoniously. But when you introduce all this friction and uncertainty, I mean, the chances of things going wrong just amplifies itself. And it was a good side of this particular story to say, well, it's not going to be all sweet roses from everybody involved in the crime, and some people are going to have doubts about it. So we get introduced to the Dani, who are the locals who are living on the planet, and of course their numbers have been thinning out over a period of time. Some people suggested that when you first saw them, that there may have been more aliens in the group. And one of the criticisms that the show has got, which is not ironically about pacing, it's actually about the amount of aliens that you see, and you don't see many at all, if any. And there were some people who were suggesting that in the Dani, maybe some aliens could have made a presence, but they weren't. It was all humans. I personally, it doesn't bother me in the slightest, but irks some people. Do you have an opinion on it at all?
I don't mind. I think it's actually refreshing because so many times with Star Wars you've seen recently where emphasis has been putting on like the story takes a back seat and you have like aliens, all over the place and coming that it's actually been nice to not have to worry about that and just watch the story unfold without playing Where's Wally with stuff in the background.
Mm. Yeah, no, totally agree. Colin made a point. Cassie looks like Genghis Khan in that last shot. He does. At the start of the episode, he's just standing there, looking, just in his own mindset. And yeah, it's the hat that kind of gives it away. And there's a funny story about that hat later on, which is kind of interesting. So we got introduced into the Imperial side of things, and there's a lot to digest from this. First things first, Commandant, they're still sticking with the name Commandant. Behaz, that's a bizarre. No, I think it's Behaz. That's his name, unusual name if there was one. And of course, I like this discussion about how they've manipulated the Dani. So instead of having hundreds of thousands of them all turn up, there's only like 60, right? Now, that may have been deliberately written into the story to keep the cost down in terms of how many extras you have. So they've said it started off with maybe 1,500, and as they've done their 10-day trek, they've put up, watering stations and alcoholic bars and shit like this along the way just to drop the numbers off. And of course, in the end, you only end up with 60, which means 60 extras. So that may have been deliberately done just to keep the cost of the show down. But either way, it kind of works. So I don't know if you picked up on that at all, but it's kind of cool.
Well, I absolutely loved all the dialogue in this. It was one of those things where, although the Empire is a bit pompous and a bit, full of themselves, also what they're doing is incredibly smart, and you do realize they're being evil. And the way they said we gave them so many choices that they didn't even realize what they wanted wasn't on the table because there were so many other things. I just thought, gee, this is really well written, and it really does show how insidious the Empire is without them coming across as like sort of Dracula evil, just like manipulative evil.
Which is interesting because if the Dani people are all making the trek over to this place to see the Eye, and half of them have stopped along the way to sort of get drunk and, smoke the wacky tobacco and whatever else, it kind of shows them that the Eye thing isn't as big a focus as what we thought it was going to be. So instead of the holy pilgrimage where everybody goes, a whole bunch have just dropped off along the way. So there's something in that. So
what I did find interesting, it was the holy pilgrimage, but you did see the Empire were more interested in seeing it than a lot of the pilgrims, where they were like, oh, can we be out? We don't want to be working tonight. We want to witness this huge event. And you've got the Empire that are so good at what they're doing. They've actually weeded down the pilgrims year after year after year. And I thought that was a really nice plot to the story, just, to sort of show how the Empire is manipulative and controlling and takes over different sectors.
Yeah, and of course, Behaz was particularly proud of the fact that he was able to whittle the numbers down. DJ's made a point about the aliens. Would have been better. They're shooting in Scotland, so local actors, I guess. Yeah, exactly right. It doesn't worry me. I mean, the thing with aliens is that depending on how they portray them, they can be like, oh my God, there's an alien back there. Who's that dude? But if you don't have any at all, you're not distracted by it. And I think it means you're not distracted by having visual treats for the eyes. So keep it basic, keep it simple, and that way people know where else to look except at the main action. So
if I can address that with DJ, when they were talking about what was going to happen in this festival, I was having flashbacks to the Rise of Skywalker, the festival at the beginning of that. And I was thinking, oh, gee, I really hope they don't go down that track. And that's why I thought it was a nice alternate to what we've kind of seen really recently in that movie. I'm quite happy to have aliens and stuff in it, but I just thought we'd already seen that really recently.
Very, very good point, actually. DJ said he loved the scene showing that even though the space fascist, he's got a wife and a kid. Well, that's the thing. That's the side we're seeing the side of the Empire. I'm going to bring this up in a second that you don't normally get to see. And of course, in the Star Wars universe, it's always been shown that the Imperial Empire are the bad guys. It's full stop. There's no two ways about it. Every single one, without exception, is a bad dude, right? And of course, even in real life, that's not necessarily the case. There may be people working for the bad guys, but it doesn't mean that they're bad themselves. But it's easy to put them in one collective bucket. Right. So when you do see a different side to it, you got wife, kids, and all the rest of it, you go, oh, hang on, what about these people? Are they evil as well? So it really throws a whole lot of uncertainty into the discussion, where once upon a time it was black and white, good guys, bad guys. Some of the bad guys maybe aren't that bad, or some of them aren't that bad, or they've just got people who have just been caught up in what's going on. And of course, in this case, we've got the good guys who aren't necessarily all that good. So yeah, there's a bit more to it than that, as we'll see. Now, we were talking about the engineer last week, the whole engineer. Who's the engineer? Oh, you said it was Babu Frick, and it clearly was not that. It was this dude, Engineer Pettigrew, who's a colonel. The thing I found about him is the orange pips on the insignia. Now, I don't know if the show's been really paying attention and how it's doing its rankings, because at this point, prior to A New Hope, all the Imperial rankings are in one bar, right? One bar straight across, right? It's mainly red and it's mainly blue. The only person who has two bars at this point, 6 at the top, 6 at the bottom, is Grand Moff Tarkin, right? And Krennic does as well from Rogue One. So I was intrigued by the idea of having the orange markings. I'm not sure if they're following a particular canon pattern, and I don't know if there is one, whether they're making it up as they go along, because clearly after A New Hope, Star Wars, The Empire Strikes Back, everything changes, because then everybody's got reds and blues one above the other. And it just sort of balances out that way. So it's just an observation. And one of those things I picked up on, I thought, oh, he's got orange pips or orange ranking bars. So I thought, oh, cool. So
I did see that was different and wondered if that was engineering section or something like that.
Maybe. I don't know. Because Tarkin, he has, I think it's 6 blue, 3 red, and 3 orange, if I recall. But either way, he's got oranges as well. So, yeah.
It just means when Tarkin was in Cubs, he got all of his badges.
Yes, he did. And Krennic has the same ranking, which is kind of interesting. So there you go. Guy said it's amazing because even the littlest level, the Emperor dies power corrupts, and the ultimate power corrupts absolutely. Well, that's right. But that happens on all sides. So don't forget the Jedi to a large degree. The power went to their heads as well. And look what happened to them. So, so as we discover here, the engineer is they're shifting the air base from Al Kazani, I think it's called, over to where they are now, and the engineer is going to help organize all that, right? And of course, their plan is to use the Dani as slave labor, putting it simply, right? Which is interesting because Pettigrew is actually concerned about local resistance. Now, it's almost like he's a bit more on top of what's going on than what Behaz is, because for all we know, Pettigrew may be aware of all the reports going on that there are thefts occurring at different shipyards here, there, and everywhere, and he's already thinking ahead. Now, of course, after what happens in this episode, everything's going to change dramatically. But I found it interesting that while one person is saying, yep, don't worry about it, build your airfield, got all the slave labor, it's all good, the other guy who's engineering it all is sitting there thinking, yeah, but are they going to work for us, or are they going to be like sabotaging everything as we go along? And it's good that he had that mindset and he was thinking about it. So, yeah, I picked up on that. Don't know if you did.
Yeah, there was a lot of stuff going on like that. I think it is one of those really well thought out ones where you get a lot of motivation and a lot of character backstory just by what people don't say sometimes as well. Yeah,
and I agree with DJ. Yeah, I love the mugs too. I did find it interesting. I like drinking out of paper cups. There's a lot, once again, in this series, there's a lot of first things. You go, oh, I've never seen that before, so which is particularly cool. DJ's made a point saying every death in Andor, and the people who are bad, have a life, and it shows them in it. So, and if everyone matters, and that's exactly right, which is why we think they spend so much time building up our rebel cell over the past few episodes. So when their things didn't go well for those guys, you at least said, oh, shit, that's a bit sad. Yeah, this person.
what you were
Yeah.
saying about them having families and stuff, I identified with. And when he's saying to his son, just please put on dress uniform and just be good this once, or we're going to be stuck in this shithole forever. If it was my son, we'd be stuck in that shithole forever, because Cal would not do what I said, even if the Empire was there. So it's got all these levels of stuff going on that connect with different groups of the audience, I think, as well, because that's not something you would have been thinking.
Yeah, that's a very good point, actually. So we're outside, and Behaz is talking to Gorn, and clearly Behaz is clearly interested and focused on his image, as far as Pettigar's concerned, right? He's like, what's his opinion? So when we saw the two of them together, it was like they're good mates, and now we realise that's not necessarily the case at all. Behaz is really, really concerned as to what's going on. Now, I did notice the fact, and it's pretty evident, that Behaz has a completely different uniform to everybody else, right? So he's got the black thing down the sleeves, he's got the epaulets up here, right? And he's even got a black collar, which is obviously not standard. Now, I don't know if it's intentional or not. Now, we saw this in the first episode with Khan when he made adjustments to his own uniform. But because of the guy's physical size and his demeanor, I was thinking, are they trying to emulate what happened with Goering from World War II? And for those who don't know, Goering was the field marshal in charge of the Air Force for the Third Reich, and he deliberately made his own uniforms, made them out of scratch because he wanted all this flash and dazzle and bling and blah, blah, blah. He was the only one who had them. And I was just wondering whether this is meant to echo that, where Behaz has said, well, I want to put a bit of epaulet here and some black stuff there and a bit of this and a bit of that, just to stand out from the crowd. So I don't know if it's true, if that's the case, but I don't know.
It is one of those things, because they did actually point it out with Khan and his, like, oh, have you got pockets or something now kind of thing. It is something that they have thought about for sure. I don't think it would just be a random thing. Even if it's never mentioned on screen, someone in the background that was doing the design would say, well, we should do this and this because of this. And there would have been a reason behind it, I'm sure.
Well, if you're listed as you're the commandant, you're the dude in charge, you go, well, I don't want to look like the same as everybody else. That's boring. Gorn has the same color uniform as I do. So, he could have put a bit more color into it, but having the black epaulets and this and that, I think it's completely intentional. And I think that may have been the inspiration for it. So, I don't know, but it was interesting. I sort of straight away go, oh, he's got different bits on his uniform. And we have seen this prior with Khan when he did it to himself. So with our heroes, one of the things we do learn, and once again, we get learning all this backstory from all these characters, right? So Taramin, I'll get it right eventually, was once a stormtrooper. I thought, oh, how about that? And as was mentioned, good old Cinta wasn't exactly happy about it when she found out, because clearly the stormtroopers killed all of her family. So that would have produced a bit of angst in the ranks at that little cell when they've been there together for months. So when they're sitting around the campfire, you do wonder what kind of stories he would have been telling her and she telling him. So what do you reckon?
It is interesting at the different shows how the stormtroopers sort of have a different sort of a way of being portrayed. They're obviously called stormtroopers because they're shock troopers that are meant to instill fear. And in this, you can see where that is. They haven't turned up yet, and when they do, it's going to be bad. But in Obi-Wan, you had them sit in the back of the farm truck talking to the mole guy and, having conversation with the locals. It's just a different level of stormtroopering, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly right. So it's just an interesting thing. So Taramin, for whatever reason, jumped ship from being a stormtrooper. Probably, who knows what the story was and whether there was any potential link that he happened to be on Cinta's planet at the time when her family was getting knocked off. Oh, you could just draw all these conjectures together. But without him, you can clearly see that they would struggle to sort of get the whole routine going, to walk into the base and the marching and all this sort of thing. So his presence was actually quite vital, and it's kind of interesting to sort of see his fate a little bit later on. So our heroes, who initially started off as being dressed as the Dani, have now swapped and changed uniforms into the Imperial uniforms. And I thought this was an interesting moment. So they've got to pretend to be the bad guys while the Dani walk past them, right? And how awkward would this be? And like in this case, like that lady there, gives our Skeen there a bit of a dirty look and all the rest of it. It's like, you just want to say, we're here to help you guys. It's all good. Wouldn't that just like really test your mettle?
Are they here? Are they there to help them? Do you not think when this goes down, it's going to actually get worse for them when the Imperials crack down on everyone?
Oh yeah, but no one's thinking of the repercussions. It's a good example as to saying, we're going to do this. What happens tomorrow is someone else's problem, even though we ourselves caused the problem. So, I totally agree with you. So, but in their headspace, when you're a good guy, I'm doing this for the right reasons, you're thinking, I'm going to help every single one of you people, even if the exact opposite occurs. So, but I thought that was an interesting moment because that would be a real twist. You just want to go whisper, it's okay. We're here to rescue you. But clearly that's not going to be the case at all. Let's see, interesting comment. I feel like they're echoing I can't pronounce it, Mujahideen on Afghanistan during the 1980s. Don't know. I mean, you've talked about the Dani. I'm not entirely sure. I wouldn't have thought that was intentional. It might be just inspired by rather than as a direct copy, but you never know. One of the things that I saw is one again, as soon as something pops up on the screen, you go, oh, check that out. And I had a laugh when I saw this. Even in the galaxy far, far away, there's still room for a good old-fashioned camera and a tripod. What do you reckon, dude?
Could have been worse. It could have been a selfie stick.
Yeah. I mean, we're so used to seeing things on laser beams and holograms and all this sort of stuff. It's just got a good old-fashioned camera, and a tripod. I thought, good on them. Go old school. That's what we want to see. And as we see later on, Karras's Instamatic camera that we saw earlier, his Viewmaster, whatever, it's 1,001 uses that thing, doesn't it? It's like absolutely fantastic. So it turned out not to be a piece of junk after all, but we'll get to that later on.
And talking about old school, when we went to school, when we get to the guns, we do see if they shoot lasers or bullets, don't we?
Yes, we do. And I was going to bring that up actually. So our heroes have gone off as dressed as Imperial troops to get into the base, and Cinta and Vel have just vanished, right? And we discover they're over here in this little rocky alcove looking at the base. I got to say, I mean, clearly they filmed this at a real dam. That's why this series works so well. In a real location, everything looks real, and I think that's just absolutely spectacular. And, of course, they're hiding there. And, of course, for the first time in the galaxy far, far away, for whatever reason, we have a dude taking a leak. What is the deal with that? I thought that is just really completely and utterly left field. What do you reckon?
I just thought it was that extra level of realism, and I do think they're going for stuff in this. They're ticking off what have we not seen in Star Wars before? Someone having a slash on some rocks, let's do it. But there have been in every episode. I think in the very first one you were saying, death with eyes open and all this. I do think this is a stylistically unique Star Wars series.
Yeah, and some people were like, "Oh, mate, now it's hit a new low." And now you got dudes freaking having a piss in the bloody Empire. But I agree with you. It's just because you've never seen it before doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing. And I found it was a way to try and humanize all the people involved, rather than just saying, "Well, they're faceless, they're nameless, we don't know who they are, what they do." Sure, you didn't need to do it, but I agree with you. Maybe they sat and thought about it and go, "No, let's just do something you have not seen before," because it would happen. Right, those stormtroopers you're talking about in Kenobi, right? At some point, they would go to the bathroom and they just go, "Yeah, whatever. We're out in the middle of the countryside. Off we go." And I thought the fact that they did that, it's meant to be not disturbing, but sort of like jarring for people, because you're taking it from the point of view of Cinta and Vel, and of course they're not pleased having to hear this. And of course the guys, if you listen to their dialogue, they're talking about they're objectifying women. They're talking about probably some of the Dani girls who passed them early, and they were saying they've got their thoughts and views about that. So for them, it's uncomfortable. And I guess for the audience, it's uncomfortable as well. So we're feeling what they're feeling. And I actually reckon that was really, really cool. Because in normal movies, the dudes would just walk past and not say a word and away they go. But now we're getting some really, really unpleasant things. And I think, good on them for doing it. What do you reckon?
Yeah, like I said, I just think it's one of those things. And it also shows that the series is giving itself time enough to breathe as well, to have little character pieces like that and little scenes like that, because a lot of the Star Wars series feel like, the faster, more intense, and this is the kind of thing that gets cut out or not filmed because it doesn't fit with the director's vision. So I am really liking what they're doing with this series.
Yep, it completely worked for me. Just going right back to the thing with the camera, the Pitagar's camera. Yeah, I like that from Colin. Yeah, they haven't received the latest iPhone camera updates, and DJ's confirmed. Yeah, they filmed it at a hydroelectric power station, and I go, it had to be real. There's no doubt about that. So, and there's an argument. It's very funny. We've seen all the previous series like Obi-Wan and Kenobi and Mandalorian. They're all filming on the volume, right? All these digital backgrounds. And then Andor said, no, we'll go to a real place and we'll shoot there. And it's just spectacular to look at. They add a few extra bits in to make it look, to give it that Imperial look. And it's like it's winner chicken dinner right across the board. You cannot fault how things look. Now, you might remember a few episodes ago, I was talking about how the guys, our heroes, were marching, how they're holding their guns, right? And you might remember Skeen and Tamarin were holding their guns facing outwards, and then Cassian said, no, change around so they're facing inwards, right? And as we see them marching, they've got their guns facing inwards. So two guys who were right-handed, two guys who were left-handed. And as I said to you at the time, that's unusual because all stormtroopers and all troopers in the Empire are all right-handed, right? And as it turned out, I was completely correct because later on, you see them all. They're all right-handed, right? And even up here, even these guys walking here, right? And I thought, well, that's interesting. So our guys are the only ones who are holding the guns on their left-handed side. And later on, you see them all like, so you got this one there facing that way, that one facing that way, and these two facing this way, which is jarring, really. It doesn't make sense. Realistically, you'd think these two would swap their hands and hold them right-handed. And that's why I thought when you see this scene later on, which occurred earlier, these guys clearly don't recognize our heroes, which is fair enough because they're from the air base. But you'd almost be wondering, are they thinking, why are they holding their guns in their left hand, considering no one else does? It was an observation. That's all it was. So, yeah. But it was something I picked up a little while ago, and I thought, so in this, with all these troops, everyone is holding the guns the right way. So,
yeah. What might have been really cool is if they had fooled everyone by those two holding it right-handed, and then when they did their plan, you see them like switch over because they're left-handed. So blending in a bit smarter. I mean, it's not a big deal.
No, and it's not. It is interesting why they did it in the first place. Even if you're left-handed, you'd still hold the gun right-handed because you don't want to stand out from the crowd. And these guys are standing out, from the crowd. So,
yeah,
very, very good. And I agree with you, DJ. The volume certainly is a solution to a problem. And it's no criticism with it whatsoever. It looks fantastic. It's wonderful. It does beautiful things. But I guess any filmmaker in the world will say, hey, if we can film in a real location, that's the way to go. And this proves that filming in a real location just does wonders for the way.
I do think Star Wars fans are fickle. I don't know if I said it last week, but when the volume was created, everyone was like, what an amazing look. What an amazing piece of technology. 2 years later, it looks better when it's filmed on location.
Yeah. And just getting back to DJ's comment, yeah, sure. From a cost perspective, shooting the volume is way, way cheaper than going to an actual location. But, as far as the world's concerned, the real deal, you can't knock it. So there you go. All right. So this is a symbolic. There's so many symbolic moments in this episode. It's not funny, right? Behaz is trying to do his belt up, and this is the symbolism of saying that the Empire's gotten fat on the misery of others, right? Even his wife says, "Oh, maybe you put on a bit of extra beef," right? So in other words, while the galaxy is suffering in inverted commas, people like him are just like, mate, lapping up the good life. And I think this is a sort of meant to reinforce that. So I don't know if you picked up on this, but I certainly did. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I thought that was quite a pretty obvious one, and also one that's quite easily to interpret from the audience about what's happening and what type of people these are. Also, probably what the base is, and when it goes back to the whole monitoring the universe or the galaxy, how complacent they've become.
Yeah. It's life's. I mean, it's been mentioned in previous episodes between Cassian and Luthor how the Empire's just become arrogant and just enjoying their own success, not realizing that it's upset a lot of races and people and a lot of aliens in particular. So, but I thought that was interesting. Yeah, sorry.
The other thing I'd point out, and this goes for me as well, whenever you try clothes on and you've gone up a size, and you can't put your belt on or something, it gives an insight to what he is thinking as a character as well. And like he would be knowing it's not as good as I used to be, Actually,
it's a good point because even he says, the way they packed it, they've ruined it. It's not him getting bigger. It's the thing has gotten smaller. So, and he's not even willing to admit that he put the weight on until his missus says, oh, yeah, maybe it was you who put the weight on. So, yeah, it was just a very interesting sort of moment and absolutely loved it. And, of course, then we talk about the family scenario, right? So we've got the wife and we've got the son. And straight away, the strong English accents are back, English/Scottish. An imperial blouse. I thought that's a term you don't hear of very, very often. Yeah. The kid is constantly sick, right? So clearly he's not happy being stuck on Aldani. And there were threats of child abuse, but it could just be a threat. There's no indication that there actually is any child abuse. But it was an interesting sort of moment. And I agree with you. He just needs the kid for one day to just suck it up, son, because he's got to look good in the eyes of the Empire and for the engineer guy and all the rest of it, because hopefully with a bit of luck, they'll get what they want and they'll get shipped off planet because clearly the missus and the kid are busting their chops to go. And you can understand why, because it's as boring as batshit where they are. So,
yeah. And that's part of the monotony of being in the Empire there. And that's probably why the kid doesn't behave, because he's like bored out of his brain and just wants to be on his news streams or whatever they do.
Well, I interpreted that he's actually got an illness. He's actually not a healthy kid at all, right? Because as the wife said, he's sick, and Behaz says, the kid's sick all the time, and that could be for one of a number of reasons. I mean, they're in an imperial outpost, so there's no other kids hanging around, and you almost felt sympathetic for him. really, because they clearly don't want to be there. They want to be somewhere else. Imagine they're sitting here on Aldani all by themselves, hearing about the good life on Coruscant and the inner worlds and the core worlds. They'll be going, why can't we get posted there? So,
yeah, I was thinking, I didn't see it like that. I kind of thought it was like my son will say, if he doesn't want to do something, he'll just go, I'm sick. And that's why he said, you're sick all the time. You're doing this. Like, you're not using that excuse this time, kind of thing.
Yeah, it's interesting. You saw it that way, and I kind of didn't. I actually thought, no, he actually is crook. He's just a weedy, wimpy dude. So, but he's a kid in a scenario where it's like, well, I'm in a military base surrounded by frigging nothing. So, yeah. Anyway, so it's an interesting sort of interpretation of exactly the same thing. So our hero, our bad guys, are going to go and do the tribute thing with the Dani, right? And they're talking about the goat. What do you want to call it? Hide. They call it a goat. They're no galaxy, no special name. No, sort of like, what do you want to call it? Where they put a galaxy far, far away term at the front of it. It's just a goat. And so I thought that was interesting. They haven't even tried to hide the fact that it's an alien goat, even with the extra horns.
Should have put it a space goat, then it would be fine.
Well, anything. I was surprised by that, so an Earth goat even. But it wasn't the case. They just said straight out, it's a goat. And I go, oh, okay, very, very cool.
Have we had any like Earth terms for animals apart from hounds? Even that they put Carillion hounds in front of it. They haven't really.
Not for animals. You've seen them. We saw them on Dagobah, snakes and lizards, real ones, but they weren't mentioned by name. No, other things have come up, like you hear mushrooms get mentioned in Attack of the Clones. No special name, just mushrooms. But I don't know, for whatever reason, they thought, no, we'll just keep the name, just a goat. And we saw it, and all it was, the goats were the horns, the millions of horns, but they didn't get a special Star Wars name. And I thought, isn't that interesting? Apparently, there's a variation of the goat called the Dray. That's where the milk comes from, that they sort of drink all the time. I don't know if it's the same goat or not, but yeah, very, very cool. There you go. There are ducks on Naboo. Let it go. It might be ducks, but are they called ducks? I mean, are they just called Naburian Siberian ducks or something? So, yeah, it's just an observation. It's no big deal. Yeah, it's all good. Yeah. So does the scene, this is the one with the family, advance the plot? No. In your case, it doesn't. Humanize the Imperial in command would make things morally squeamish when the heroes use him to hostage later. Absolutely. I think everything advances the plot in this particular story. If not, it builds up characterization between all the people. So, yeah, each their own, I suppose.
This is all character and plot, which I think is good. And rather than being a lot of plot and a little bit of character, this is probably the first Star Wars where it's about 50-50.
Yeah, because you think of all the times you've had, especially from an Imperial perspective, in any Star Wars TV movie show, you just do not get characterization of anybody. Sure, you've had the history with Vader, but that was in the prequel trilogy, the history of Palpatine in the prequel trilogy when they were normal people, but you never get to see another side of the bad guys, and they're getting equal screen time, and we're getting to see different things from them. Whether you agree with it or not, I don't know, but it doesn't make them all just identically the same, which is what we said earlier on.
This is like a 6-episode Star Wars series that's been expanded to 12 episodes because all the extra stuff like comic books and books that are usually the offshoots of other ones have just been put in the bulk of the main story of this one.
Yeah, exactly right. So we're getting to the heist part. Now, I had to rearrange some of the slides here because what happened is we're sort of jumping between all these three events, right? So you've got our four guys doing their thing, Cinta and Vel doing their thing, and what the Imperials are doing. So I've had to rearrange this a little bit. So if you know the episode, well, you'll be going, hang on, there's some bits out of whack here, right? First thing I saw, and I love this, right? The three guys are running past, right? It just to show that even in the Empire, things can stuff up. So these dudes are running past. Oh, we forgot, we weren't told what was going on. And they're running past, and the dude on the left sort of having a bit of a go at them. I thought that was great because everything you ever see is always slick and organized and planned well, and everything goes to the procedures as they're meant to be. And this actually showed for the first time, no, things do actually go cockeyed sometimes. There are communication breakdowns, and it meant nothing, but I got a lot out of it. I thought it was actually particularly cool. So, yeah. Just chuck that in.
Yeah, don't have much to add, but that was cool.
Yep. And so with Cinta and Vel, I mean, how's this, right? They're doing the whole James Bond thing under the water. And they had the wetsuits and everything. So not like Kenobi who just sticks in a thing in his mouth and off he goes. And I did like the fact that you had the flashing of the eye go past overhead. I thought that was particularly cool. And, of course, that leads us to this fantastic World War II spy thriller thing. They're climbing up the ladder. That's when the guys run past that we saw a few moments ago. And I thought, how grouse is this? This is really, really cool. It's so rare in a Star Wars thing where people wear disguises and actually have to get dressed up just to do the mission. Normally they just go wear their normal clothes. How good's that?
Yeah, I thought from basically when the mission started all the way through, it was plotted really, really well, and everything in it made sense and was really good. And as you said, it's a big difference between Obi-Wan jumping in the water with his respirator or whatever to the full gear. And when you think about it, the water would be freezing cold, but Jedi don't feel the cold, I guess.
Yeah, I suppose. So just to reiterate what DJ was saying earlier, he mentioned that it didn't matter if the scene didn't advance the plot, and that's okay. So on the same wavelength, and saying it was characterization, and he was 100% for it. So it's just not. And I agree with what you said earlier. The fact that the show is so long, you can spend time doing these things. If it was a movie, they probably wouldn't have time to do it, but they have got time, and it kind of works. And you just pick out little things from it, and you go, oh, okay, this is really interesting because we want to see where this is going to go. So. Poor old Behaz and the troops have all had to go down and do the tribute thing. And this actually confirms that Behaz is actually familiar with all his own troops because he picks out straight away that he doesn't recognize our heroes. And he says, oh, these from the Aldazani, whatever it is, military base. And it's confirmed that they are, even though we know they're not. And I thought that was actually quite a nice touch because typically you would think the commandant wouldn't know his troops from the backside of the moon. But in this case, he clearly does because he spotted these guys straight away. And I thought, oh, that was kind of groovy. So...
it also probably goes to the point that this is a good base to hit because it's obviously not got squillions of Imperials. It's a skeleton crew where the commandant can know everybody who's there.
Yeah. So the mission starts to take place, right? And of course, because the show is relatively unpredictable, you don't know how things are going to play out. And I did like this moment. I thought the whole thing could have fallen apart because that's Vel running the back down there. And I thought, had this dude just stuck his head around the corner, the whole thing would have gone completely pear-shaped, which I thought was kind of groovy. And we got the obligatory meaningless gesture from both sides, right? They clearly hate each other. They got to go through this process of handing over the goat skin thing. This, you could argue, was a meaningless moment that didn't do anything. But it did sure to show that, yes, Behaz was prepared to take one for the team and go, yep, I've got to do it. Even if he doesn't want to do it, hand over the goat skin. The other dude, the Dani dude, clearly didn't want to do it either, but they went through the process anyway. And it was just, I don't know, I thought it was an interesting sort of moment. And, of course, I think you find here that they just burn his gift, which makes sense because they clearly don't like the Empire. And, it was an interesting sort of moment.
I think it's it shows the Empire is still at a point where they pretend they're recognizing and honoring the traditions of the locals, where maybe a couple of years from now where they tighten their grip, like no one's going to be going to give goat skins to anyone anymore.
Yeah, there's probably a fair bit you can sort of sit and dissect from all that. And of course that does replicate real life, hundreds of years ago, when, the British Empire landed on different countries and met with the indigenous populations and tried to mix with them. Well, yeah, it probably echoes a lot of that, actually, the tributes and whatever else, even though clearly one has far more power and superiority over the other. Yeah, there's probably a fair bit you can sort of
I love in this series how the Empire in its different, different components is represented in different ways. And you've got the security force who are more like the fascist evil empire. But you see this, and like DJ was saying, there's enough character and backstory. You're like, these guys are just doing this because it's what they're told. They're not really the evil empire that we know with the stormtroopers and Vader and things like that. So there's still that area probably where the Republic is still hanging on and the Empire is slowly going through and reforming all the systems and taking grip of it. And these people are somewhere in the middle, just at that sort of workmanship level. And that's what I think is great about this. It isn't just goodies and baddies, it's shades of grey.
Exactly. So we get to this point here. So the heist has finally kicked off, right? It's taken 6 episodes effectively, after this long build-up, and it finally takes place, and already things start going wrong, right? And so Peligar, who's got a gun pulled on the dude at the back, I've forgotten his name, all he wants to do is let Leonard, that's the name of the kid, go. And I thought, isn't that interesting? So he's not saying about the wife, he's not saying him, he's saying let the kid go. And I thought that came out of complete left field from where I was coming from, let the boy go. I thought, wow, what do you reckon?
Yeah, Adam brings up a good point as well, that like when they're not all wearing stormtrooper armor, it is much easier to be humanity. Everyone's more of a human than just a stormtrooper.
And it's possible, even though Gorn says effectively the opposite later on, for all we know, the Commandant is actually quite nice to his troops. Walks past them all, g'day guys, how you doing? All that sort of stuff. And go, hey, he's not so bad after all. They've all been together for quite a few years, so certainly possible.
It does seem they're on this. It does seem they're on this planet together. They're stuck in the middle of nowhere, and they're just doing what they can to get on with it.
Yeah, exactly right. DJ, it wasn't his son. It was Behaz's son. So Pettigrew, whatever his name is, the engineer, it's not his kid. It's the Commandant's kid. That's why I thought it was so interesting. So he's trying to tell them to let the Commandant's kid get loose. So yeah, it wasn't even. So it wasn't saving himself, saving the boss's kid, which I thought they came out of left field. So Cinta comes down, plugs him. He's done, and it's interesting. So she's the first one to kill somebody. And I'll discuss it later on, but it's possibly she's the last. Hang on, she's also possibly the last person to kill somebody too. So, yeah. So, but I'll bring that up later on. And just like that, everything's off and running. Now, I like this, right? Behaz says he can't open the vault, and I said, "Do you believe him?" And you know what? I did. I thought, "Oh, dude, have they cocked this up? Have they come in there to rob the thing?" And he said, "I can't open the vault," and it's like, "He can't." I followed. I swallowed it for real. So, did you get sucked in by that?
I did. I thought they were going to have to blow it or come up with something else. But I guess the Imperial playbook is deny they can get in. That's the first response kind of thing.
But it was so convincing, and I thought, wonder if the actor was told, "Oh no, you can't get in. You've got to play it up like you can't get in." And then later on, they go, "Actually, you can." I realized later Gorn would have told the heroes, "Don't listen to him. He can actually do it with a handprint." But I thought, "Oh, you guys have really balls this up." He's like, "I can't get in. It's on a timer lock." It's like at a Die Hard, for example. You know, it's the whole Die Hard scenario. Oh, can you get into the Nakatomi vault? It's like, no.
Well, that's the good thing about that's the good thing I think about this series. If you watch something like Ocean's 11, you know they're going to get in. You know they're all going to, all do their roles, and it's just going to go, and they're going to get it. This one, I wasn't even sure if they were going to pull off this heist because they were so dysfunctional, and you weren't sure if it was going to work. And even when they go, "Are we going for this? Are we going for this?" She was like going, I don't know. Like, They weren't sure if they could pull it off.
Yeah, I was convinced that they would get away with it because I thought, well, the future story, the Alliance ends up having funding a bit of money to play with because we saw a few episodes ago they are struggling with money. So I was convinced they'll get away. Cassian clearly lives. What about everybody else? And that's a big everybody else. So that was the only thing I wasn't sure of. So I thought, they will get away with it. It would take too long to say, nah, the whole thing was cocked up. We got to leave. And you still got the original problem that you had. So I thought they would get away with it, but how they got away with it, I wasn't entirely sure. Now, this is a sign potentially of things to come. Cinta puts the gun behind Leonard's head, right? So she's going to plug the kid. And I thought, okay, so doesn't point the gun at the missus or anybody else or one of the couple of the guys who are in the room with them, aims it at the kid's head. And it's like, okay, are we now crossing from what is potentially from a good guy to like some shifty and shady areas? I mean, it's obviously done so that Behaz will go and open the vault, even though he's saying he can't do it. But I thought, that's something you don't see in a Star Wars universe, a gun pointed at a kid's head.
No, it is one of those things I think is more in harmony with what we've seen in Rogue One, where the rebellion is almost splinter cells of a terrorist group and do go a lot further than a New Hope rebellion seem to be prepared to go to achieve what they need to do.
Yeah, and there's a bit coming up later on regarding that. There's a lot going on. As far as like a New Hope was concerned, the bad guys of the Empire, the Alliance are the good guys, and that's as simple as that. They are like butter wouldn't melt in their mouths. And now for the first time, we're seeing a lot of greyness come into it, and that was all inspired from Rogue One and what Cassian said in that. So, and we're going to see a bit more of it as we go along, which is really, really interesting. So for those people who say, no, the rebellion, they're fantastic, we absolutely love them, they're going to be sort of like sitting there going, I don't know, I'm not really enjoying this because I'm seeing a side of them I don't want to see. This was cute. I don't know if you pick up on this. So the transmissions are all up the shit, right? And he's flicking all the buttons and he's turning all the knobs. And it's like, it sounded exactly like a radio interference from like the 1950s. And I thought, mate, it's straight out of Where Eagles Dare. How good was that?
Yeah, I did think a lot of the realistic sounds, and they use them from, Ben Burt went around and recorded this huge sound library. This one does seem a lot more down to earth and a lot more recognizable. The soundscape in this is dense and beautiful and recognizable, but alien at the same time. They've done a fantastic job.
Yeah, I thought, are they going to try and create their own sounds of like the radio? No, just use real ones. Like it just sounds grouse. And everybody, you instantly recognize it. You know what it is just from hearing it. Even if it's not realistic for the galaxy far, far away, you'd think, because, you know, they're not using radio waves for crying out loud. But you already know that he's having problems, and he's flicking switches up and down, up and down. I thought, oh, that's just freaking grouse. Because in real life, that's what you'd be doing. And you go, wait, what's going on?
Well, now we know that radio interference sounds exactly the same as subspace interference as well.
Yeah, exactly right. So we get into the thing. Oh, there's a couple of moments I absolutely love this, right? You got a couple of waiters, and I thought, what are they serving? Creme de menthe? What do you reckon this stuff is, dude? And look at those fancy glasses. I've got to get me a set of them. What do you reckon?
It looks very much like the cocktail that She-Hulk had in the week as well. So I don't know what they're serving. It's one of the things Star Wars does love its food, and whenever it does a bar or a restaurant or a banquet, it's alien and it always looks all different. I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, I love it. The radio noises are running with some of the Imperial transmission sounds. Oh, yeah, that's fair enough. I mean, but I reckon they got this straight out of a 1950 sound library for sure. People trying to tune in the old wireless. But yeah, I did look at that green drink. I thought, oh, mate, that is absolutely fantastic. So, was it Appletins? Appetinis. Hang on, appetizers. What's the word?
Appletini.
Appletini, is it? Yeah, I absolutely love it. Very, very cool. And did you notice this? They got aprons on the uniforms. I thought that, and the white gloves, I thought, how that's different, isn't it? And the belt goes over the top of it. So that's something you don't see every day.
The Imperial Service Crew or something. I don't know. I didn't pick up on that when I was watching it first time.
Oh, mate, love it. I was looking everywhere. Oh, that's just freaking grouse. You've got guys with aprons. I mean, they're just attached to the uniform, so they obviously wear a normal uniform underneath, but they wear the belt over the top of it. I thought, oh, that's very, very cool. Now, here's a line for you. So Vel is talking to Behaz, right, about what are they going to do with all the hostages. And Behaz says, you're going to kill us anyway. And Vel says, because that's what you'd want. That's what you would do, right? And I thought, well, hang on. We're already starting to see a bit of shades of grey on both sides here. Is this correct? And I'm going to bring this up a little bit later on, because once Cinta is left with the hostages by herself, you don't necessarily know what their fate is. And there's a bit of guessing going on regarding that. And of course, it did confirm, and I did like this, that Vel and Cinta do actually have a relationship. It was sort of suggested a couple of episodes ago. But I thought, there's no time for long goodbyes and romantic, thing. I'll see you later when there's tears and all that. It's just like, all right, I've got to go. See you later. And I actually respected that. I thought it was really, really good. So, yeah. No, waiting for you to say something.
No, I just agree with you. There's not really much more to add. I did think it was good that they just had a moment and just moved on, and it wasn't really played or dwelt on. That was good.
Yeah, because one of the things that you hate, a classic trope in the movies is like the clock's ticking down, the bomb's going to go off, and there's like a big moment, and everything stops, the music stops, the sound effect stops, or the music builds up, and they have the big long talk and the big passion, all that, and you go, but dude, the world's going to blow up in 10 seconds. You just lost 15 seconds, piss farting around here. So I did actually like that. They just got it over and done with, which is particularly cool. Greg said he's loving the 70s tech. It looks fantastic. It's everywhere, right? Every screen you look at looks like it was done like 45 years ago, as established in the original movie, representing how technology might look in the galaxy far, far away. It doesn't look dated because it's not trying to represent Earth tech in the future. And I totally agree with you. And there's clearly a conscious decision on their part, which I thought was fantastic. Adzi, Romulan ale. Romulan ale is blue, not green. So if it is Romulan ale, it has gone off.
Glass of Mr. Scott's green. It's green.
What the hell are you
from
talking
Star
about?
Trek?
What?
It's from Star Trek. It's green.
It's not. It's blue. Romulan ale is blue, dude.
No. Scotty gets a drink and it's green, and they ask, "What is it?" And he's like, "It's green."
Good on you. You know what I was saying about wasting 10 seconds on something really, really stupid and inane? That's just happening right now. All right. So one of the biggest games that we have in the Star Wars universe is Sabacc. Now, all of a sudden, it's the Galaxy far, far away version of poker. But we don't know what it's called. But they keep putting the cards down. They're saying Hexabar, Hexa, whatever. So it's probably Hexa something or other, but it's clearly designed in poker. So what do you reckon, dude?
Yeah, it's always interesting. I think when they go to the point of making up rules and designing a game, that's that sort of next level world building, which always works. There's not a lot of shows that do it, and this one does it well.
Yeah, I thought they would have gone for Sabacc on this one, but they've said, nah, we'll just invent our own one. And it's meant to look like poker, and so be it, Jedi. So
back there is apparently legal issues with, because someone copyrighted it when Lucasfilm hadn't done it, and then when they tried to do it as an official game when Solo came out, they got in trouble and had to withdraw it and stuff. So I can understand why they probably went with something different.
Yeah, and that's right. Just invent their own. And I mean, it wasn't really meant to be sat there watch. It's not like, and you're right, like in Solo when you see the big Sabat game and the Falcon gets lost. This is just a throwaway bit. And I thought it was probably easier just to make them pretend they're playing poker. At least the people watching can relate to what's going on. But it'd be curious to see what it was that they were doing. Now, I don't know if you picked up on this, right? So our heroes have busted into the area where the vault is, and all the troops are there. So they're all stood up to attention. They've all been arrested, held as hostages, and they're going to get these guys to load all the cargo of all the money, right? What I found was interesting is that after all the dust is settled and our heroes have buggered off, and the ISB come in to interrogate everybody, will they believe that none of these guys are involved, or will they all think that these guys? It was like what do you call it? An inside job. I reckon these guys are going to have a hard time trying to prove that they were innocent. They had nothing to do with it. It's like the dudes just walked in, took us hostage. We had to load the ship up, and here we are. I reckon some of them are in for a bit of a hard day. What do you reckon, dude?
I don't even know if it'll get to the Imperial interrogator droid. They're so far down the ranks, they'll just be lined up against the wall and shot for letting it happen. Even if they are convinced that they didn't have anything to do with it, it's such a massive failure for the Empire. I reckon, they're there for the chop.
You'd hope that the security cameras were all working. I mean, it doesn't look like a base that would have security cameras, even though they got all the money. But imagine that you're saying, okay, I was held hostage. Then I had to help the bad guys load all the money into the thing. Mate, I'm already complicit. And it's like, it wasn't me. I wasn't involved. You are right. I think that a lot of those guys, it's not going to end well for them. So
what is this thing with all the Imperial corridors don't have security cameras? I mean, even op shops have security cameras here. Are you saying the Empire can't put up like cameras on at the end of every corridor?
Don't know. It's hard to say. I mean, maybe they do, maybe they don't. But don't forget, this isn't a high secure base. Even though they've got all the money, you would have thought there'd be something there. But I don't know. And with that in mind, it's pay dirt. If you want to see what a whole lot of money looks like, it looks just like that. And our troops go off and start loading up big time. Now, this is interesting. So we jump over Cinta, who's now got a new uniform. And I had to sit and think, where'd the uniform come from? Admittedly, had she brought it with her, with the boots and everything, it would have got a bit scrunched up in the baggage. But I thought, all right, we'll let that one go. And then I realised it's clearly one of Gorn's spares because she's got the same rank, but she's wearing it upside down. And I thought that was actually quite neat because she probably doesn't even know which way it's meant to go. She just chucked it on. And away we go. But I thought that was actually very clever because initially I thought, hang on, where did you get that from? It's an officer's uniform. Then I realised clearly Gorn gave it to her. So what do you reckon?
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I think the cut's different for a woman, but it's very close. Yeah. And you're absolutely right. The rank thing is upside down, so it probably is just one of his spares. That is quite cool. I didn't pick up on that. You're obviously more perceptive than I am.
No, yeah, it's the whole costuming thing. And I agree, yeah, clearly the costume department made it to fit a female, but I thought, where did it physically come from initially? Because you would have thought it's one thing to have technician uniforms disappear overnight because there's so many of them, but officers, there weren't that many, and I realised, it's clearly Gorn's. And I thought, good on him for remembering that his rank bars, that she had a copy of those as well. But when she goes stick them on, they're around the wrong way. And I thought, it's just, who would notice that sort of stuff? But except for nerds like me.
Well, do you know what? But by you noticing it means there was someone in the production team that put it there. So they really have gone to that next level for that kind of detail.
Yeah, and they made sure it matched with his. They didn't put him extra because I thought if it's got extra ranks, I thought you can't lose rank pips. You know, that doesn't make sense. But if he had spares, that then makes a lot of sense. Although, as I said earlier, how she got the boots and the uniform through without getting it creased and the thing under the water, don't worry about that. Very, very cool. All right, so we were talking about the guys earlier, the parole hostages who were being forced to sort of load up the ship left, right, and centre. And I like the fact that a couple of them clearly were not happy doing what they're doing because don't forget, this is their payroll that's getting swiped under their very noses. And I did like the fact that a couple of them did fight back. They didn't just go wilting in the night. And this guy in particular who ends up fighting Cassian on the ship, I thought, yeah, good on you, dude. Stand up for yourself. Don't be a wimp because even though you got all these guns pointed at you, just make an effort. And I really appreciated that, even though for this guy it didn't end well for him. But, I thought that was a really, really good moment. So because there was a lot of tension going on at that time. There's all the shit going on. Quick, load the ship. We go, got to beat the clock and all that sort of thing. And you thought, and then they drop a trolley and all the money spills out over the floor and all this sort of thing. It was not easy, not by any stretch.
I think it is one of those things where it depends how committed you are to the Empire, whether you're prepared to give your life for the payroll or give your life to not obey the rebels, which of course would be the mantra and the doctrine that the Empire would drum into you. But then there are some people who would be, well, the Empire aren't paying me enough and I'm just stuck out here for my whole life. Why would I give my life for that cause, kind of thing? And that's what DJ was saying earlier. There's different levels of character in this that just show that it's not all cut and paste people. They have actually given everyone, even the random people in the background, a bit more backstory and a bit more life than they usually do for a series like this.
Yep, totally agree. I realised I missed a comment from earlier, which I thought was interesting. DJ made a point about the card game. Is it the one the guards were playing with Canto Bight? I don't know. Possibly. I mean, that's the casino sequence in Last Jedi. I don't know. I never thought to even go back and have a look at that. Be curious if they did. So if they did, that's a nice little bit of detail, I've got to say, using the hexagonal cards. So I'll have to check that out after this. Very, very cool. Yes. All right. So while this is going on, I just want to cut back to our Ardani guys who are having the big chant and celebration. And it's done, the editing is juxtaposed between what's happening with the celebration going on. Remember, all the Imperial troops are down there with these guys, right? So they're thinking the world is great. And while the heist is going on up the road, something that someone pointed out is that with all the elf-style hats and the bells and the colorful lights in the sky, it's like Christmas. It's like Christmas. And as far as our heroes are concerned, it is like Christmas because they're getting all this money. So I thought it was just interesting the way it was sort of edited together. These guys are chanting. The heist is going on at the same time. It could be a little jarring depending on how you like your shows cut. But and some of this stuff was a bit unnecessary. But yeah, I thought it was just interesting to sort of point that out. But yeah, Christmas time for the locals.
Yeah, again, it's one of those things where they've gone to the point of making customs and traditions different from what we've seen in Star Wars before. It's not gone, they're celebrating Life Day again or something like that. They've actually gotten something different.
Exactly right. And of course, we do get to see the eye, right? And of course, it is actually a very, very groovy visual effect. And of course, in real life, if this happened for real in our own sky, I'd be like, oh, dude, no wonder you wanted to go and see that. You'd go to check that out. So I reckon the design team were thinking for ages, what are we going to do about this eye thing? It's got to look really spectacular, but, it's going to be a special effect we don't sort of normally get to see. And it worked very, very well. And I liked how you got the reaction of all the people looking at it because they're all just mesmerized by this thing. If anything, you could say it's almost like the meteor shower in Day of the Triffids, unfortunately, which blinds everybody. But
yeah, that's why that would be very fitting to call it the eye. I thought it was an amazing scene, and like I was saying, this could have been a finale of a series, and you'd be happy with it. We've still got more to come. The visual effects of the eye probably wasn't meant to be this, but it did remind me a little bit of I think it's a Ralph McQuarrie, or it might be a Drew painting, the fireworks going up from Jedi with all the spaceships flying through it. There's a movie poster. It's one of the more unusual ones. But when I saw it, I was like, oh, that kind of reminds me. It's very Star Wars. It's a very Star Wars-ish effect, even though it's something we haven't really seen before.
Indeed. No, love it. Galaxy Far, Far Away version of the Northern Lights, which is very, very groovy. All right, guess what? Everybody's been saying we haven't seen stormtroopers anywhere. Well, actually, now we have. Once again, Eagle Eye pointed them out in the Alkenzi Air Base when we're seeing all the TIE fighters on the thing, and you see them in the distance there. So I thought, there you go, stormtroopers. For those people who be wanting to see them, there they are. Stop freaking complaining.
Well, this was the sequence that needed to be in Obi-Wan that wasn't there that I was waiting for. So I'm glad they put it in this one.
Yeah, that's right. When he's on the ship escaping from the planet. And I like to, how good is this? You don't see this. And I thought this is like mirroring what we see in A New Hope when they're all the guys on Yavin 4 all getting the X-Wings getting ready to attack the Death Star. You actually see the guy get to open the lid and jump in and all this sort of thing. Oh, it was great. You just don't see this anywhere. How grouse was this?
It's interesting. Dags and I work with a guy called Chad, and he often says, oh, if they made the cut scenes for a video game and put them into the movies, that'd be fantastic. And the cut scenes for a video game are the cinematic stuff that it plays and you can't play until you get into this TIE fighter and take it off. And this reminded me of one of those amazing scene settings before you play the game yourself, where you see them getting in the TIE fighters and powering them up and adjusting stuff. And this is the stuff I think really works so well because they have taken sort of that idea of that like extra bit of build up to the action, and by taking that pause and putting it in makes the action so much better.
You know what? I agree with you, because in normal Star Wars shows, you just see the TIE fighters fly out, right?
Yeah.
You wouldn't see the dude physically get into it. He's hitting switches everywhere and all this sort of thing. And the fact that they've bothered to put that in here just adds a bit more to it that you don't normally get to see. And it's like, and I don't know if you picked up on this, but And so these ships have got different color schemes to the ones we see in A New Hope. So normally TIE fighters are grey with the inside panels are black. Okay, that's how they're meant to look. But these guys just look like one whole color. And I like the eye reflecting in the windscreen. I thought that's a neat little bit of detail, isn't it? Which I thought was particularly cool. I realised there's a shuttle back there as well, which was rather groovy. And I did think the cockpit was bigger than usual because in the New Hope they seem to be really crammed in, and this guy's got space everywhere. But I thought it was kind of cool, and he's hitting switches all over the place. And well done for them for the extra detail.
And the other thing that you don't know if it's one way or the other is, are all TIE fighters identical? So you drop the pilot in and they can just fly whatever. But no, you see this guy adjusts everything to himself. So they are all adjustable and you can move them around. I thought that's just a cool little bit of background for TIE fighter. Anyone who's into modeling and TIE fighters and stuff like that would just love that you've got that tiny little bit of extra lore that now goes with TIE fighters.
You are right. So a modeler who loves their TIE fighters will say, I'm going to build a cockpit with all these extra lights and doodads in there and 10,000 friggin' switches, which is really, really groovy. So it's that extra, you're right, that extra bit of detail you've never seen before. But when you see it, you go, oh, mate, that is grouse. So that is really, really cool. Here we go. This big long statement. This scene is showing that a lot of the TIE fighters and their fighters and flight pigs is expensive. Expensive? Okay, 100% know that some producer tried to convince them to not pull in. It shows that the pilots as people that are dying and they don't die pleasantly. This show good about every life. Yeah, well, exactly right. So I think it's just because someone said, have we ever seen a guy get into a TIE fighter and go, nah, all right, let's put one in because finally get to see some action for a change. And, of course, we get to see that Alkenzi is actually built into a ridge, which apparently was an airbase before the Empire took over. So whether it was for the old or the Republic or the Separatists, I don't know. But I thought that was quite cool. But, yeah, even though it's just one of those things, you've got time to do it, why not do it? And it looks really, really groovy. All right, we go back to the heist.
And I thought sorry, that's what I was going to say about when you do these heist stories, there's always got to be a vault or obstacle or something to get in. And this is the way that the base is built into the ridge and into the mountain and the way they get in and get out. So it's another one of those things where we've seen it before, but we've never seen it in exactly the same way.
Yep. Indeedy doody doody. So we get back to the heist. And poor old B has, even the galaxy far, far away, had a heart attacks are still possible. I did not know that this was going to happen. All right. No. I mean, the dude is on the gantry. Remember, he's walked in on the action. Gorn is trying to tell him it's a special mission, bugger off. And this guy is about to cark it. And that just sets off everything. And I thought, isn't that interesting? Because when they were getting him to work in the first place, and you see him, he's pushing the trolley and he's sweating and all the rest of it. And he's clearly an overweight, unhealthy kind of guy. That I thought was great. And then he just drops it, and that's it. It's just all over Red Rover. So he was never going to get out of there alive. But he wasn't killed by the bad guys or by the good guys. He just died of his own sort of volition, so to speak.
Well, and that's what's fantastic, because sometimes you complain about when stuff just happens in a script to drive the story, but you truly feel this was justified, even though it was something that you didn't expect, because you saw he was a bit overweight and because you saw they made him carry all this stuff and push him around. When it happened, they're like, oh no, because this is not what was meant to happen. And they just have to change their plans on the fly. I thought it was fantastic.
Especially from his perspective, he would have seen the guy come out the gantry and go, oh, we're saved. Yeah. And of course, he carks it right at that point there. So the firefight breaks out, and there's a lot of images and a lot of footage to cover. And I've just got to grab a couple of things here. So first thing that happens is Gorn gets hit, right? And as some people have picked up, it doesn't appear to be fatal, even though we don't see him again after this. So you can probably argue that when the ISB and the security guys all turn up to find out what's happened. I reckon Gorn's in a bit of a pickle. And they were using different sound effects for the guns too, which I thought was interesting. So they've changed, they've gone away from the Ben Burt style of sound effects from Star Wars, and they've introduced new sounds. I'm not entirely sure what that was. And the new sounds sound a bit more darker, deeper, but they haven't kept the original Ben Burt sound effects. I don't know if you picked up on that. I think you did.
Yeah, I noticed on that straight away, but that was only because I was waiting to see what those guns would fire. So when they fired and it was different, I thought that was very cool as well. I have spoken to people in the week who kind of said, oh, I didn't like those guns. They just looked like they pulled them off the shelf and didn't have the budget to change them. But I kind of like that it just shows the level of material that's available to the rebels. They just have to take whatever they can get, old or new. Kind of thing.
You're right. And of course, we did confirm that Vel's AK-47 does actually shoot laser bolts, even though there's a bullet magazine just underneath. But I think they are intentionally trying to ground it in real world so people can relate to everything that's going on. I mean, the last thing you want is a laser gun that looks a bit too it just looks too wanky, I suppose. But a real gun looks like a real gun. So, but yeah, each their own. Tarraman, he carks it. All right. So he lived by the Empire and died by the Empire. And of course, died trying to run over and save Val.
Yeah.
And I thought that was particularly cool. I mean, we'd said a couple of episodes ago that in the heist, some of these guys aren't going to make it. And some of these guys probably realize they're not going to make it. But of course, they're all expecting to make it. And I thought it was good. We're losing a few dudes left, right, and center. We get in the ship. And the last thing you sort of expect is the accident that nobody saw coming. So Cassian forgot to say to everybody, strap yourselves in, including the cargo. And poor Karras cops the full load of the money on the trolley in the guts. And it's like, oh, dude, that is going to leave a mark.
That's probably the worst way to go, because I'm sure everyone who's watching has caught their foot on the corner of a table or something and how much that hurts. Now, just imagine being crushed by the thrust of this mega stacks of cash as a spaceship takes off. That is going to hurt. And then to add insult to injury, they spike him in the chest. It doesn't look like it's too comfortable either.
No, he's not doing too well. Ad's made a point about saying he knows the same things with the guns in Rogue One. So, yeah, I mean, it's nothing to say that, after, I mean, it's kind of wanky because they've used the same sound effects and Rebels and whatever else that after Rogue One, the Empire reissues brand new guns with new sound effects. I don't know. So, but it was interesting that they've changed the sound effects. Now, this is an interesting observation, right? The hostages at this point are still alive, right? Keep that in mind. That's all of them. And they're all watching what's going on. They're watching the eye out the window and the ship taking off and all this sort of thing. So, Med Nog to Med Spike. Dude, Bacta in a syringe. Cop that one if you don't mind, umpire. That's going to wake you up. What do you reckon?
It really is. I don't know if it's Bacta or what it is. Maybe
it's not
a neural stimulator or something. But I did think initially, this is going to save him. You're like, oh no, they're just getting the information out before he passes.
So it's probably like adrenaline or something else. Now, somebody picked up on this. I thought this was interesting. Karras actually says, climb, climb, climb. And of course, K2SO will say exactly the same thing in Rogue One. So Cassian is involved in both sequences, if I recall. And climb, climb,
well, there
climb.
You go. Well spotted on that one, because I didn't pick that up. And now you say it, I recognize it instantly.
Yeah, so it's a bit of a big deal. So they got their ship, and they got he's got his down here the Viewmaster or the Instamatic camera that helps him get out of absolutely everything, which is cool. Now this is the interesting one. So Cinta leaves, and of course the question is, did she kill the hostages? Right, and a lot of people have said no, they don't think she did. Right, but I tell you what, you look at her demeanor, I reckon she did. Now whether she killed all of them or left the kid is anybody's guess, but it is clear to see from her character as we've seen it so far. She would be the equivalent of a Saw Gerrera type rebel person, right? All Imperials are bad Imperials regardless, and they've all got a carcass. And I get the feeling, just the way she walks down here, because don't forget, they can identify who she is. I reckon she killed them all. And we won't know, I don't know if we'll ever find out, that she killed everything. The two dudes, the technicians, the mother and the son. So what do you think?
I don't think she did, but you might find out. I don't know. I did think she looked pretty grim, and the way the show's gone, it is possible either way. Maybe you're right. Maybe she did. I did think she left them, but thinking about it, maybe she wouldn't want to be identified, so just shot them all. I don't know.
So a counter argument would be she stuns them all, which is fine, right? Yeah. But she has a clear hatred of the Empire, like absolute one eye. Done, right? I mean, she hated Tarraman because he used to be a stormtrooper, right? And they didn't connect. And she got the hostages there. She's got to escape. And as you can see, she's not running. She's not bolting. She's taking her time to leave. They know what she looks like. Okay, even if the kid and the mother don't say anything, the two technicians will. And I thought, you look at the body language, and it just looks like someone who says, okay, I've just done something I'm not proud of, but I had to do it. And I personally would be really curious to see what they did, because if she shot the mother and the kid, and hopefully it gets covered off in the next episode when all the troops arrive and they investigate what's happened, it'd be very, very interesting. Or she could be looking guilty because she didn't do it, as you said, just stunned them. So just couldn't do it. Even though, remember, she pointed a gun at the kid's head earlier on, and she would have shot him there and then. You would have thought it had B has misbehaved. So
I guess it all depends whether the AK-47 blasters have a stun setting.
Well, that's exactly right. So, yes, we'll have to wait and see, but I get the feeling she did. And I thought if she did, then, okay, so that's really crossing a whole lot of territory. Remembering this is the equivalent of what would happen in real life if you're like you have an occupation force going on and you're the resistance, using like the French resistance of World War II. How far do you go? So anyway, so we shall wait and see. There you go. Ads doesn't say this often. He agrees with me. I don't know which bit, but whatever it is, I kind of appreciate it. DJ said it's dark. I think it's intentional. So he saw them all alive earlier.
Yeah.
And then suddenly we don't see them at all. So make it that what it is. And DJ said he didn't pick up on this first watch. So, and he reckons that I could be correct. So remembering, and it is important to remember that Saul Guerrera's group, right? They are the hardcore bad guys. That's the reason why his group and Mon Mothma's group don't get along, which we see in Rogue One. Okay, so very good. We shall see indeed. I thought this was interesting, right? So while this peaceful moment, everybody's having this magnificent moment looking at this, the eye in the sky and all this sort of thing. It's absolutely fantastic. And if only people realize the repercussions of what's to come, right? Enjoy tonight, kids, because tomorrow it's going to go down badly. So what do you reckon?
Yeah. Well, they got some extra excitement tonight because they got to witness the eye and then the spaceship takeoff and the TIE fighters and stuff like that. So it was an extra good celebration this year.
Yeah, love it. Yes, you guys are in depth. Well, it's what it is. It's just that's part of the thing of analysing what you see. And clearly in a TV show like this, nothing's put in by accident. Everything's done deliberately, right? And that's the thing. And if you can pick up on that and discuss it and go, well, okay, especially that one with Cinto, it's like, well, who thinks yes, who thinks no? It's kind of cool. It's kind of thing you like to sit around and talk about with your buddies when you get a chance. This was interesting. So we're on the ship. Karras is dying, right? And even Skeen says that he actually thinks Vel doesn't want to save him because the mission is too important, right? How's that for a turnaround? It's like the young dude who kind of got him through everything, and Skeen says that without him they could never have gotten through. And even though Vel doesn't agree or disagree or doesn't support what Skeen says, it's effectively the case. He's going to die. Let him go. It's like, hoi, that's a bit rough, wasn't it?
It is one of those things. You've seen it more, I guess, in lighter versions of the same kind of thing in Star Wars, where you get Obi-Wan saying, Padme wouldn't want you to go back. It's the mission. Go after Dooku. And you get the thing with Leia where she's like, you shouldn't have come and saved me. You've got to get that R2 unit. They let us go kind of thing.
Yeah.
This is a lot more adult version of that kind of reasoning.
And with that, so Karras is busted up. They say, and it's actually Skeen who says, go to the doctor, right? And we finally do get to see an alien after all this time. Dr. Quadpaw. What a friggin' name, eh? Unbelievable. I like this. No mod squad bullshit from friggin' the Book of Boba Fett in this. It's actual surgery, spines and everything. Now, to be fair, the mod squad stuff doesn't occur for another 15 years after this, right? So, going to be, maybe it's not in vogue at the time or the technology's not there. I don't know, make of that what you will. But I like this. This is completely straight in, blood and gut surgery. And I thought, and even like Val's actually holding up the bags of the fluids and all sort of thing. I thought, why didn't they do this in the Book of Boba Fett?
Yeah, it is. I guess because it's a different, pitched at a different audience, obviously. That's just why, really, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's exactly right. And I thought, no, there's no mod squad rubbish here. The dude's got his headphones on and he's just pulling body parts out. And he sticks new body parts in, and Karras wakes up and goes, mate, I am ready to party. None of that at all. And of course, the guy dies. And I thought, hey, isn't it interesting? So of all the heroes that have carked it, I mean, it goes to show that this mission has had a really high price, right? They've lost more than 50% of the people involved. And all the heroes just died. There was no last minute, like Karras wakes up and he says, please make sure that the world is good and I love Cassian and all this sort of, there is another Skywalker. Or none of that. He just carked it. And I thought, well done to them for that, right? After all this build-up, they all three of them, they all just died. And I thought, that is freaking brilliant.
Again, it does tie into what's alluded to in Star Wars, but you never see, where you have people like Mon Mothma going, many Bothams died to bring us this information. And now we're seeing the other side of that, where you have those teams that work for the rebellion and what they actually go through to provide the information, or in this case, the funding for the rebellion. It's all the unsung Bothams that don't get mentioned at the briefing.
See, what's interesting is that we know that before Karras died, he actually says to Val that he wants his book, Manifesto, given to Cassian, but we don't see that, right? So we don't have no idea where that occurred. Right, and it could have easily done the whole long holding each other's hands, and there's blood. It's like he's crying, he's like, I'm hanging in there, and Cassian walks in. Like, didn't do any of that. That's so unusual that they would just take that route, considering that of all the heroes of the group, Karras has had a lot of character build-up. When we saw it at the start of this episode and the previous episode, he's got a connection with Cassian, and he doesn't even get to talk to him, right? So if you look at it from a perspective of how the show played out, they've got on the ship, right? The cargo has just crushed him, right? They've just given him the spike wake up. He doesn't even get a chance to talk to Cassian at all. So that was really left field, something you just do not see. And in Star Wars, we saw it with Qui-Gon, with Obi-Wan. It's like, train the boy and all. Everybody gets to say their last words. Yoda did it and all the rest of it. Here they said, nah, don't even do that. And I thought, applaud them for that one. So
wasn't Cassian in the previous episode where they're like, how are you going to fly the ship? How are you going to get it out? Wasn't he saying, I can do all that intuitively?
I can't remember. Yeah, maybe. But they needed the pilot, and he was the one who was going to do it. And they weren't prepared to give him the job. And then he said, I'm doing it no matter what. And they said, all right, fine, you're doing it. So, but yeah, so good old Karras didn't even get to speak to Cassian at the end. And I thought, yeah, well done to that. While all that's going on, outside, Skeen and Cassian are having a gas bag. And all of a sudden, out of absolute nowhere, Skeen wants to take the money and run, right? There's 80 million credits in there, 40 million each. Let's piss off to a moon, split it up, and away you go, son. And I looked at this and I thought, okay, I reckon this is a test. Skeen is deliberately trying to tempt Cassian to see what he does, right? That's how I interpreted this, right? Remembering they're both looking after number one, which is themselves. Now, we know that Cassian is doing it for the money, but up to this point, we didn't know what Skeen's motivation was. And as he said, he doesn't have a brother. All that was prefabricated, right? And I thought he's dangling a carrot to see what Cassian does, to see if Cassian's a traitor or not. And as it turned out, as we discover, it's the other way around. Cassian just kills him. I was like, I didn't see that coming.
I actually did. As soon as he started saying that to Cassian, I was like, oh, he's got to kill him now. Because if he doesn't go with the scheme, then he will have to kill Cassian and try and do the scheme with someone else. And Cassian doesn't want to go with that. He is obviously a person who was going to stick with what he said he would do, because he's not the bright paragon of goodness, but he does stick to his word and does what he says he's going to do. So I was like, oh, this is it. He's going to have to shoot him, and he did.
So I didn't see that coming at all. And the fact it was so quick, boom, gone. And I thought, oh, geez, okay, because I was too busy processing. Oh, Skeen actually wants to bail. And as Cassian says, hang on about the Rebel Alliance and all that sort of stuff. No, look after number one, right? So he's got imagine that. They got all the trouble to get the money, and he was just going to nick off with it, And it's like, oh, dude, that's a bit low. But to be fair, remember, our heroes did not know what was going on, what the reasoning was for the heist, right? Remember, Val was the only one who had connections with Luthen, so they are only getting information through her. So she could have told him any story. Really, as to what it was about. But the fact that Skeen was saying, what Karras is dying in the other room, dude, let's just take the ship and go. I go, oh, I didn't see that coming at all. And I didn't know that Cassian was just going to plug him like that. Like, just normally they hold the gun and they have a bit of a conversation, then he shoots, but it just kills him. I go, okay. And I agree with DJ, the best scene in an episode of Amazing Scenes, and it was. Yeah. And I love that. I thought, I did not see that coming. And of course, then he's got to go and tell Val, oh, by the way, I've just killed Skeen outside. And she thinks he's done the dirty, and it's not the case at all. I thought,
and you probably wouldn't believe him, because he is the new one they brought in, So I did think oh, this is going to be an interesting ride home.
Yeah, and I agree with Adzi 100%. It's the brutality we've been wanting, and I totally agree, and I really loved it. So of all the people involved in the heist, there's only two survivors, Cassian and Val, right? And that's it. Everybody else has died one way or another. I thought, oh, dude, that is just unbelievable. And it's kind of symbolic, because later on something happens that links back to this, and I'll get to that very, very soon. And then, of course, Cassian is prepared to take his cut and just bolt, right? He's going to hand back the Kyber crystal, which I'd kind of forgotten about, because remember I'd said that, he's wearing the Kyber necklace that Luthen gave him. And, of course, if he's wearing that on Rogue One, and, of course, Jyn Erso has one, that's a bit of a moment. They both got a necklace together, and they're both Kyber. But if he's handing that back, and he does hand it back, and that's worth 30,000 credits by itself, don't forget. So I thought that's a good moment. So it goes to show his absolute honesty, which is particularly cool. What do you reckon?
Yeah, no, I thought the same thing as well. So it was like nice piece of character development as well.
Now, this is a bit of a gag that someone pointed. I mean, it's a bit hard to find something light in something that's so dark, right? But Karras said he wanted Cassian to have his manifesto, the book that he's writing in, right? Which is a page turner as far as we're concerned. And as someone said, is this enough to turn Cassian over to join the Alliance? But then someone said, dude, it's got to start with a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. What do you reckon? How
Yeah.
good is that?
Yeah, that's funny.
He's supposed to finish it. They were in the wrong place at the wrong time. Naturally, they became heroes. That's from A New Hope, a novelization. So there you go. Cassian killing Skeen was the smartest move. Well, clearly Skeen wasn't to be trusted, and you reckon had they flown off to the planet together, Skeen would have knocked Cassian off. Plotting this from the beginning, lying about the brother. Yeah, you don't know why he did the brother thing. Yeah, exactly. He wouldn't split the loot with Cassian. So yeah, Skeen was a shifty dude all this time. So, and considering he'd been with the other guys for all these months, yeah, he was prepared to just cut and go. So,
yeah, well, that is the thing as well. Out of all of them, he had known Cassian for the shortest amount of time, so he'd have had no qualms about killing him as well.
This is the reason I just realised it just then why Skeen wanted to go to the doctor to drop Karras off. It gives him a chance to land and have a chance to think about it rather than taking the ship over while they're in flight. So, having to knock Vel off while he was there. So with Vel on the planet looking after Karras, they can just get in the ship and go. So I just realised what the logic was behind that. All right, so they've done the heist. They got the money, right? What's going to happen next? And of course, all the shit's going down at the Imperial Security Bureau. All the troops, everybody's turned up. And it's a detective case. No one's going home. Call the family. I thought this was a good line, actually. Call the family. Once again, all these people have got families. So normally you wouldn't think that. There might be Korea people, but they've still got families and young ones and whatever, cats and dogs. I thought that was very, very cool. And there's one line that's said, and you go, oh, where's this going? Star Sector and Planetary Retaliation Plan. Oh, dude, shit's going down big time. Oh, what is that going to mean? What's that going to entail?
Well, that's what I was saying earlier about the planet. They are not in a good position because of what they've done, and they're just, I don't know what level of technology they are, but they look like goat farmers, don't they? So they've got no defense about what the Empire is going to rain down on them, because obviously they're going to think the whole planet rebelled against them or something to do this. So that's nasty. The one thing I will point out there, this from doing productions of shows, it always makes it really expensive when you put props on the roof. And I loved the Imperial room had all the designs on the roof as well. I thought, that's that extra level of design in the architecture that really shows that they've put a lot of thought into this. And the designs, they didn't get those designs and say, that's fantastic, but take the stuff off the roof because it adds this much to the budget. They've gone for everything in this show.
Yeah. So what it's telling us, and this is what the whole series to this point has been about. So the Alliance needed money, right? And someone, probably Luthen, is probably in cahoots with Mothma, said, well, there's all this money here. It's the payroll for the dudes. We're just going to steal it, right? On paper, it sounds like a great idea. We steal all the money. Yay, team. We've got all this money. We can then fund the Alliance, right? But clearly the Empire is not going to be very happy about it. And there's going to be repercussions. But of course, when you think of repercussions, you go, well, what could it possibly be? A few planets get bullied a little bit, and a couple of things happen here and a couple of things happen there. Based on what we know from the Star Wars universe, everybody gets clamped down big time. And it is a case of everybody is to be arrested and interrogated. And you are right. All the Dani and the Eldani planet, they're not in for a good time at all, because that's where the robbery took place. Sorry, dude, what were you going to say?
The money's gone. What do you mean we can't afford hand railings for the Death Star?
Yeah, exactly right. So it's going to get very, and then of course it's the ends justifying the means. You go, okay, was it all worth it, right? For the amount of pain and suffering that everybody's going to be going through for the next 5 years based on this one event, will it be worth it? And of course, we're probably going to see that in this series. And so you do wonder. So you can say, well, the Empire's treating everybody badly. And this is the reason they're treating them badly is because what we did over here. So it's cause and effect. Yeah.
It is one of those things that it does tie into Star Wars really well, where there's those grey lines, and even the money that they get from this are going to go to arms dealers, you would think, and it ties back in again to The Last Jedi with the casino, where they find out, they're at the casino and the arms dealers are taking money from both sides because they're the only ones really making a lot of money out of it. And so it is good because the rebels now have way to fund what they need, but it is all part of the war machine. You need two sides to fight a war, don't you? And it's just gone from the Imperials getting domination to the rebels being able to put up a resistance terrorist cells.
Yeah. But and you are right. And as we find later on, more systems join the Alliance because of the clamps that the Empire's put down on them, caused by the Alliance stealing the money in the first place. I feel this episode went from being really good to being brilliant. I totally agree. His favorite Disney show, Star Wars thing, 4K, all the props and yada yada. And I agree. And that's where after 6 episodes, it's just gone right through the roof in a big way. But we're still not at the end yet. We've only got a couple more shots to go through. So we go to the Senate. We finally get to see what's going on in the Senate. Now, aside from the fact that most of it's empty, which I thought was kind of cool, there's not even anybody running it. Now, a lot of people have suggested, would Palpatine be up there doing his thing? No, he's already long since nicked off running the day-to-day of the Empire. It would be Massamita or Sly Moore, probably Massamita, who would be up there.
Yeah.
But and I like the fact that Mon's doing this big speech. Half the pods are empty, right? And in a few years' time, all this is going to be dissolved anyway. Seeing the Senate was fantastic. I thought, this is absolutely awesome. But there's no one running the show, and she's just effectively talking to nobody. And of course, they're all distracted by what this is coming out regarding the news. And then she realizes what's happened, and it's like things are going to be very, very different the very next day. And I thought that was kind of cool. So, yeah, but seeing the Senate, it's awesome. Here you go.
What I thought, it was interesting because I thought they were not listening to her because she was just boring. And I was thinking, this is how the Senate is, like, it's not functioning anymore. But then when you start realizing more and more of them are seeing the news, you go from, this is really cool. And she's going to be happy about this, because originally I'm thinking she must be frustrated nobody's listening to her. And then the scene changes where she knows their plan has come off. So I thought it was every scene in this is so well thought out and so well crafted, in my opinion.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. So all the senators are hearing what's going on. I've said, have you heard the latest? Oh, my God. And, of course, they're probably all thinking, what the hell's going to happen now, right? 80 million credits have just gone walkies from Aldani. That is not going to end well for absolutely anybody at all. So be very, very curious to see what happens. Now, in the interim, we've jumped over to Paul Luthen's version of Aaron's Collectibles. Luthen the Chummer. I like that line. If you can't read the language, just make up your own. So he's having a good time. And this dude here says, have you got anything from Aldani? Because there's been a big rebel attack last night, and there's been and it's in the news, mate. How good is that? So there's the latest hot goss that's going around, and you can bet this guy is not going to be impacted by it whatsoever. And then, of course, that leads into the last shot, which is the symbolic moment. He's having a good old laugh about the fact that the plan worked. They've stolen the money. But laugh now, dude, because you're not going to be laughing tomorrow. a lot of star systems are not going to be laughing tomorrow. And it is going to get very ugly very, very quickly. So what do you reckon, dude?
Well, the last scene as well, when the guy mentioned, Adani, I thought, he's been caught out. This is a spy or something. And then again, it turned to where when he starts talking about, there's been an incident there, you're like, no, this is how he's find out about it. And I just like how usually everything's really predictable, and I'm terrible at guessing what's going to happen. But this one has been really nicely surprising in sort of every scene.
And you are right. So Luthen thought he was caught out. He says, see if I got something from Aldani as he walks around the back. I don't know if you hear it. The guy in the back says, but I was only joking. So clever. And that's how it finished up. And you are right. You could end it there and go, all right, move on to another series and see what happens. But, of course, this is the day after. What is going to happen? And now we know that Dedra had said to – I can't think of the guy's a really unusual name, the leader of the ISB, said, I told you something was going to happen at some point. So her suspicions are now been vindicated, right? And you do wonder how it's all going to play out. And I tell you what, it's going to be fascinating. So, what do you reckon, dude?
Yeah, well, what I reckon is Kirsty isn't around to give us our critical yawns this week. So I'll start off by going, I don't think it gets much better in Star Wars than this. It's different from, example, Mandalorian, which I think has like fantastic episodes, but it's a different kind of fantastic this time around. I would probably give this about a 9.5 out of 10, and I only leave that half just to see if this can ramp it up even better towards the end.
I'm with you. When I was watching this, I was actually on the edge of the seat because I thought a lot of shows, and Mandalorian is, as I said before, is a prime example. They're going to walk out with a scratch on their face, right? They're getting whatever the mission is, they're going to get away with it. Yeah. Din Djarin will be fine. Grogu will be fine. It is just color by numbers, right? Right? You just watch it and you think, I've seen it all before. With this, I actually was, and I was watching late at night with headphones on, and I was really on the edge of the seat because I did not know what was going to happen. And I thought, being the show that it is, we know Cassian survives and the robbery takes place, right? And it will succeed. Everything else is complete unknown. And the moment they entered the base, it was like, all right, now the tension's kicking off. What is going to happen? And I absolutely love that. So I'll just go straight to the 9. I'm not into the half thing, but it really worked for me. And I thought if there were critics of the show up to this point, this should allay all the criticisms. And if there are those who have already left, stopped watching it, well, they're really missing out. But it definitely, as we've said, isn't for everybody. Guns pointed at kids' heads, guys, having a urinating on, or just a sound effect, all this sort of thing, and just a really, really dark edge, and characters just getting killed off without any final last words. And I agree with what was said earlier by Ads. Really refreshing, really different, and it could. And there are a lot of people. I've read a lot of comments. They're now rating this as the best Star Wars series that's been produced. So they're out and stripping Mandalorian and Kenobi and Boba Fett and whatever, but just by heading down this path. And I thought there's something with that. Yeah, I agree with you, DJ. No yawns. Totally agree with you. So with Christie's yawns, the more yawns, the worse it is. And no yawns means it's a 10 out of 10. And I completely deal with it. So absolutely loved it. And yes, bring on more of it, I guess. What do you reckon?
I've got to say, from how it started, a little shaky, I'm incredibly impressed. And the other thing that I'm impressed by is the slow burn with Khan, who was up front at the beginning. And we know that that's going to come back at the end, because, they don't usually do that, where they introduce someone so early and leave it in the background sort of bubbling away. We don't know who Uncle Harlow is yet.
Yeah, you beat me to it. I was trying to think of the name. What's the deal with Uncle Harlow? And, of course, Kerry, Cassian's sister, has got to reappear at some point, you would think. And Cassian, he got his money and he was just leaving. I was like, what happens after that? So, but the ISB are not a happy bunch of bunnies. They're going to bring in their retaliation thing, whatever it was, the retaliation plan. Oh, bring the darkness, kids. And we'll have to see how it all goes. All right, so it's almost an hour and a half. We've been at it for a while, but it was a long show to digest and dissect and all the rest of it. It's been absolutely fantastic. Just quickly before I forget, don't forget, if you haven't done so already, be sure to check out the Sci-Fi Zone socials. We've got all the YouTubes and the Twitters and even the Twitch and whatever else, which is all very, very exciting. And, of course, if you get a chance, you've got to make sure you check out Aaron's store for all the latest hot and non-existent Aaron Andor collectibles. Is that right?
Not much yet, yeah.
No, exactly right, which is very, very cool. All right, good stuff. All right, is there any final words you want to mention before we buzz off for this evening?
No, just thanks everyone who was with us tonight. It was a long episode of the show, but it was an excellent episode of Andor.
Love this one. Yeah, Wednesday nights. Don't call me. Don't play anything. It's Andor night. Yeah, well, we'll watch it after we do our show on Wednesday night. And I do kind of suck. I think, oh my God, while I'm talking to you, there's Andor's on it. What am I missing? Unbelievable. So love it. Score of 2.5 till they escape, plus 7.5 for the kill at the end. Oh, yeah, absolutely fantastic. All right, we're going to buzz off. Hopefully you enjoyed everything. We will be back next Monday to talk about episode 7. With halfway through the season. And I tend to agree with you, dude. It's just going to get better from here. So, all right, we'll leave you to a party hard rock on, and we'll catch you next time. Okay, bye for now.
Have a good night, guys.